Hello, everyone, and welcome into Coach Craig's Sports. This is the live stream for the Thursday Night Football DFS Single Game Showdown Slate between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Miami Dolphins. So we're going to start off first off just by going through the inactives for tonight's game. There's not too many that apply too much for the DFS slate overall. So for the Bengals, we have guard Jackson Carman. He's just a backup guard. Drew Sample, who's supposed to be done for the year, but he hasn't been placed on IR for whatever IR for whatever reason at this point in time. And then Deontay Smith's just a backup offensive lineman, and Travion Williams just a depth running back that was mainly playing special teams. For the Miami Dolphins, we have Ethan Carter, a backup tight end, maybe a rotational guy if he was healthy. I believe he's dealing with a concussion, though. Eric Ezekamba, who had the very good preseason, he's not active today, although Cedric Wilson is out, which is maybe a little bit of a surprise there since Wilson's not playing. You thought maybe he'd be active, but he's not. Cedric Wilson being out opened up some other opportunities that we'll be talking about in a little bit here. Myles Gaskin is inactive once again. Salvon Ahmed is the third running back. Noah Igbenogany hasn't really done anything all year, even though everybody in front of him has pretty much been hurt. So he's probably a first round bust at this point in time. And then we have Hunter Long, another just backup tight end at this point in time. So Cedric Wilson's really the only big one in terms of inactives for tonight's game. The biggest thing we saw out of this, obviously, A, Joe Mixon's healthy, B, Tua is playing, and C, Jalen Waddle is also playing. So those are kind of the three big ones that we were looking for the inactives. But now that we got that done, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to DraftKings real quickly here. Let's see. All right. So now that we are over on DraftKings, we're going to go through the players in tonight's game. I am going to switch over real quickly just to the flex pricing because I prefer to look at the flex pricing because you only have one captain spot. And it's pretty easy to figure out how much the captain spot is going to be in terms of pricing. So right off the bat, we have $11,000 Jamar Chase. He is the highest priced player on this slate. He is not somebody like I'm super interested in. I'm still going to get to him quite a good handful of times, I should say, at least tonight. Tyreek Hill's obviously had the great start to the season. He's going to be very popular tonight and probably somebody that you're going to want to play, whether it's in the captain spot or the flex spot overall. Jalen Waddle, he was dealing with that groin injury in practice this week. He was been kind of limited. I didn't think it was a big deal overall, just on the short week either way. So I don't have a problem getting to him, especially with the potential volume that he could see once again. Joe Burrow is another guy that's super popular into tonight's captain spot. I believe when I was looking earlier on Run the Sims, projected ownership, he was about 16%, which is actually quite a bit when you consider all the good players that are on this slate overall. I believe he was getting about 16. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins were both getting about 12%. Tyreek Hill was getting 14, I think, at the time. So a little bit of interesting ownership there overall. Joe Mixon at $9,000, definitely going to be getting a little bit of him as well. I think I skipped over Tua there, but obviously Tua is playing, so you can play him. He's kind of one of those underrated captain picks tonight. Obviously, you think quarterback in the captain spot is going to be pretty popular overall, but maybe on tonight's slate, it's not quite as popular because everybody's chasing Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, because that's one a lot last year is the wide receiver in the captain spot paired with the quarterback in the flex spot. So maybe you take Tua along for a ride and then you take both his playmakers with him, or you pay down for a guy like a Mike Gesicki or a Trent Sherfield, who may play more this week just because Cedric Wilson didn't play. Although Sherfield did play quite a bit last week with Wilson being kind of limited in that game overall. Let's see where we were at here. So T. Higgins is the next one up because we're skipping over Teddy Bridgewater. Obviously, since Tua is playing, we do not have to worry about Teddy Bridgewater, who is already priced up at $8,400. If Tua didn't play, it would have been kind of interesting to see how much you get to him overall. Then we have T. Higgins at $8,200. This is one of my favorite plays. It's also one of my favorite captain plays in general for tonight's slate. With T. Higgins in your captain spot, obviously you're going to put Joe Burrow in your flex spot. And then you may have to make the choice. Do I want to play another wide receiver along with that, whether it's a Tyler Boyd or Jamar Chase? And Tyler Boyd's actually somebody I do like quite a bit. So getting a little bit off topic here real quick, but the matchups, Xavier Howard is probably going to be on Jamar Chase most of the night. So that's obviously the toughest cornerback that the Dolphins do have. Nick Needham is the other outside corner, or at least he was last game. He's kind of been moving around him in the slot. Him and Kader Kaiho, I believe is the name. I'm not sure if that's pronounced correctly, but he was playing slot primarily last week. And he's just an undrafted rookie. So he doesn't have a whole lot of experience. Tyler Boyd should be able to have an advantage over him in this game. T. Higgins should be able to have an advantage over Nick Needham in this game. So that's kind of where I like taking my shots. Obviously, Tyreek Hill on the opposite side has been talking a whole lot of crap to Eli Apple after their whole little spat last year when they were on the Chiefs and the Bengals respectively. So there could be something there as well. Waddle's kind of that safer volume play probably for me overall. Then since we were just talking about Tyler Boyd there, we already talked about T. Higgins. Samaje Perine, you don't want to touch at $7,400 now that Mixon's playing. If Mixon didn't play, I wasn't even like that super interested in Perine. I was more interested in Chris Evans overall because he was a cheap price tag. Chase Edmonds and Raheem Mostert are kind of like that big next question mark because you got the double running backs for the Miami Dolphins. First week it was Chase Edmonds. Second week it was Raheem Mostert. Last week it was Chase Edmonds with the 2 touchdowns. So are we going back to Raheem Mostert tonight? I feel like more people are going to be chasing Chase Edmonds overall. That sounds kind of funny when you say it that way with chasing Chase Edmonds. But I do not mind Chase Edmonds as, kind of a sneaky captain pick as well. Maybe you throw in the Miami defense that they can get some pressure on Burrow and create some turnovers. You can write that narrative. I think if you're playing defense tonight, it's probably going to be the Miami defense just because of the pressure that they can create. And some of the injuries that they did have, those players are playing, so I don't have as much concern with them. The Bengals could generate some pressure, but I would be a little bit more interested in them if Tyrann Armstead for the Dolphins end up missing playing left tackle. So that's kind of a long way about going about that. Let's see where we're at now real quick. We got Hayden Hurst at $8,400. He's been dealing with an injury the last couple of weeks. Didn't play a lot of snaps last week. He could sneak in and be like viable if he gets a touchdown or something. Kind of the same thing with Mike Gesicki. He's not getting a lot of targets. And really, you're just hoping for a touchdown with either of those two guys if you're playing them. So I'm not super interested in them at this point in time. Raheem Mostert, I do like quite a bit at $4,400. I got a couple different stacks built where I have like 2 in some of the pass catchers, and then even running Raheem Mostert back is like that 4th or 5th guy overall tonight, because maybe the Dolphins are leading and then they give him the ball on a bunch of carries towards the end of the game. Maybe breaks one loose. Doesn't take too much for a guy like him, especially if his speed is all the way back like it could be. I think both kickers are very much in play today. I think both these kickers are reasonably good kickers. They're pretty underpriced tonight too. When you think about it, usually there's $4,000 to $4,200. They're at $3,800 and $3,600 respectively. Maybe just a little bit cheaper because of all the different playmakers on this slate overall. Then we get down to the fun guys, the cheap guys. Got Durham Smith, who plays a decent amount of snaps for the Dolphins, but mainly a blocker. Maybe slips loose and gets a touchdown at $2,800. If you want to take that dart throw, you can definitely do that. River Craycraft's an interesting one tonight, just because Cedric Wilson isn't playing. He's $2,400. Sherfield's been the one that's played the more snaps, but Craycraft's the one that got the touchdown, been a little bit more productive overall. So those two guys you're kind of just taking shots back and forth with. And then we have Alec Engels, the fullback, $1,200. You kind of have to hope you get lucky with him. $1,200 is just a little bit too much for him. And then we just kind of get down to like all these low end guys. Like Mike Thomas will play a couple snaps. Mitchell Wilcox will play a handful of snaps. It is important to note, Drew Sample's not playing. Wilcox did play a decent amount of snaps last week, but doesn't really have too much production. But for $600, if you want to die on that dart throw, you can definitely do that as well. And then like everybody else just kind of down here is not anybody we should be super interested in unless you're just expecting like Trent Taylor to take a punt return back or Chris Evans to take a kick return back. That'd be kind of your shot if you were trying to do it down in that range overall. So I do see we got a couple different people watching. If you guys have any questions in general for DraftKings, for the Showdown slate, be sure to leave them in the comments, guys that you like in this slate overall. Heck, if you want to talk a little bit of Fanduel, we could do that as well. It's just a little bit different strategy because we have 6 positions on the DraftKings side and 5 on the Fanduel side. And oddly enough, Fanduel was pretty good on Monday night. I had the ideal lineup besides flipping Ezekiel Elliott and Saquon Barkley. I had them flipped around. So the difference between first and like 900th, just between all the guys you're splitting it up with, was very, very slim overall. So I'm just going to go through. We're going to build a lineup real quick since we're already in here. Excuse me. So I like doing the T. Higgins lineup personally. I'm going to put him in the champion spot. I know Run the Sims is a little bit lower on him. The guys that they really had tonight that you could get some in terms of projected ownership that you could get a little bit of leverage on in terms of projections: Joe Mixon, Tua Tagovailoa, and then Tyler Boyd overall. So I do like having a T Higgins lineup. Obviously, if you're playing T Higgins, you're going to play Joe Burrow, because if T Higgins is having success, Joe Burrow is going to have success throwing him the ball. Now you get to the other side of the game, and do you want to play Tua and one of the wide receivers? Because more than likely, if we're playing T Higgins in the champion spot, we're probably going to do like a 4-2 stack for Cincinnati overall. You could do a 3-3 overall for this game, just because there's so many different playmakers on it, but typically that's not what wins as much. I like throwing Tua in here, and you could get real creative if you want to put Sherfield in there as well and take a big risk that way, and then maybe you end up with like a Joe Mixon and somebody else. Joe Mixon and Tyler Boyd or something like that. You could make a different lineup like that. Or if you want to put a little bit better wide receiver in with Tua in that situation, you could go through and you put a Waddle or Tyreek Hill. We'll put Tyreek Hill in this case. And then we have $7,900. So there's a little bit difference there if we do go about it that way. Then you're probably throwing in like an Evan McPherson, and then you're in that $4,000 range where maybe you throw in a defense. You're taking a shot on somebody at that point overall. So I do see we got a comment here for some Fanduel as well. And Mostert I like on both sides. On DraftKings, he's $4,400. On Fanduel, he is $8,000. So definitely some good pay down option there overall. We'll see whether or not it kind of strains out to be in his week again, or if we got a little bit of Chase Edmonds once again. And let's go back here. I just want to show I'm higher on Tyler Boyd this week. So I just want to do a champion spot with Tyler Boyd real quick and just kind of show you guys a little bit of different possibilities if you do that, because he's only $10,500 in champion spot. I mean, there's lots of different ways you can approach this slate. That's the biggest thing tonight. You got him, you got Joe Burrow, and then you probably play one of the other wide receivers too. I mean, you could just play Joe Mixon and like the kicker or something if you really want to do that as well. And then we could do that. We could do Tua, and then we have $7,900 left over. But in that case, maybe you don't do Tua. Maybe you do Jalen Waddle, because we think he's going to have a decent target share, and maybe like a Chase Edmonds. So you're thinking that the Bengals are leading this game pretty good, working out pretty well for them. They're getting some dump offs to Waddle and Edmonds, but Tua is not having the greatest game in the world himself, personally. So let's see here. So we got Mostert is VPT. Oh, I'm going to assume that's captain. So yes, there's different ways that you could do with Mostert as the captain. Obviously, he's a very cheap captain if you want to do it with him as the captain. Let me just clear this out real quick. Because he's $6,600, I believe, in the captain spot, because he's $4,400 normally. So if you want to do with him in the champion spot, captain spot, you could do that. And then there's a way that you could play Miami defense and then open up some other things, or you could just play him in the champion spot. And then maybe we play Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, and then kind of go from there. There's a lot of different ways that you could go from there as well, whether it's like a T Higgins, a Tyler Boyd, and then you kind of take your dart throw on the last guy, whether it's Jason Sanders. This is actually a lineup that could be potentially viable here, although it is a 3-3, where Mostert might get some of the touchdowns for the Dolphins overall. Tyreek Hill's still going to do his little thing there. Jamar Chase, along with like Burrow and Higgins. Although, like, if you do that, there's probably a decent chance that one of Hill, Chase, or Higgins outscores Mostert, but at the same time, that could be something that's viable overall. Let's see. I want to do one. I'm just going to do one real quick where we put Sherfield in the champion spot just because he's so cheap. Because sometimes when you do put somebody that's so cheap in the champion spot, you can open up a lot of other playmakers. So if we did that, we put him, we put Burrow, we put Tua in, we put Tyreek Hill. Can we put Jamar? So we could put Jamar Chase and Tyler Boyd in that situation. Or if we didn't do Chase, we could take him out and do T. Higgins. And then I guess you could put Joe Mixon in that situation. I just kind of like messing around a lot, especially when it comes to some of these lower price guys, especially with the guy in Sherfield. I'd have to look it up, but I remember him playing quite a few snaps last week. I'll see if I can bring that up real quick though, on the side here while we're talking a little bit, but should be a pretty interesting slate. It's always interesting when you have this many overall playmakers in general on the slate, because you have a realistic path to maybe where Tua is the ideal captain, where Joe Burrow is the ideal captain. Jamar Chase could easily be the ideal captain. Tyreek Hill could be the ideal captain. Jalen Waddle could be T. Higgins, could be Tyler Boyd, could end up being, Miami defense, could end up being Raheem Mostert, could end up being Chase Edmonds. So I named off of probably 10 guys there that could potentially be the ideal captain tonight. And that's which makes single game so fun. And when you're building a lineup, you just want to be telling that story no matter what's happening there. I'm trying to bring up that offensive. How much Sherfield played last game? Let me pull this up real quick though. So for those of you who don't already know, I track snap counts for every single team, for every single player. I have a big old spreadsheet for that throughout the year that is available on my Patreon. There's a small donation per month, but ends up being about 50 cents a week during the NFL season for that. And it's something that takes me about 4 hours a week to do. That's the only reason I charge a small fee for it. But let's see. And if you do that, you also get my weekly matchup sheet. You get my weekly rankings and everything else like that. If you're interested in more in depth, my DFS sheet where I have my kind of player pool for Thursday night football, typically Sunday and Monday night football as well. And then the week for both Fanduel and DraftKings, that is on there as well. But that's a upgrade in the tier a little bit there as well. So I am looking from last week. So last week, Tyreek played 86% of the snaps. Jalen Waddle played 74. Trent Sherfield was at 63%. And Cedric Wilson, although he was playing, he was very limited, was at 12%. And then River Craycraft was at 21%. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see something similar to last week where Sherfield's the number 3 wide receiver, plays about 60 to 70% of snaps once again, especially with their depleted tight end room too, with no Hunter Long and no Ethan Carter. They just have Mike Gesicki, Durham Smith, and then the converted wide receiver in Tanner Connor out of Idaho State, I believe it is. It was just a big kind of deep play wide receiver that they converted to tight end, and they felt good enough about him and not trying to lose him that they kept him on the active roster. But he's only been playing about 1 or 2 plays a game overall. So I think that's kind of the big one. I'm going to pull up some other snap count rates from last week too. So last week we saw Raheem Mostert at 56% of snaps, Chase Edmonds at 44%, 55% for Mostert in week 2, 51% for Chase Edmonds. And then week 1, it was more Chase Edmonds with 63% compared to Raheem Mostert's 42%. So that's kind of an interesting trend to track there. But obviously, Raheem Mostert is probably going to be used more on early downs. If he breaks off a long run, he's going to be definitely worth the payoff at $4,400 on DraftKings, and then $8,000 on FanDuel, obviously. And then let me go over to the Bengals real quick, just because they're a little bit interesting as well in terms of snap counts. So pretty much we've seen their running back position all year. It's just been Joe Mixon and Samaje Perine splitting it up, but Mixon's played 73%, 76%, and then 66% last week, but he was a little bit banged up. And then Perine's been at 26, 20, and 34%. And Chris Evans has played like 3 plays all season. Jamar Chase is the clear leader in snaps for the wide receiver position for the Cincinnati Bengals. Higgins and Boyd have pretty much played the same amount, except for week 1 where Higgins did get injured. He had a little bit of concussion at that point. But then going back to the tight end room that I was kind of talking about for them, with Hayden Hurst being banged up last week, he only played 38% of snaps. Mitchell Wilcox ended up playing 57%, and Devin Asiasi was 35%. But Asiasi really hasn't proven too much at the NFL level. If you're trying to take a shot on somebody in the tight end room that is not Hayden Hurst and hoping he gets a touchdown, it's probably going to be Mitchell Wilcox overall. But that's kind of what I have planned, at least so far. If you guys that are listening, I know there's a couple of you have any more questions, I can go. Let me see if I can go over to FanDuel real quick and just run down that real quick as well. Maybe not. So let me see. I'm going to bring up Fanduel on my phone and not have it up on the screen. If there's anyone out there that has any more questions, if you have any concerns or anything else like that, you want to let me know who your favorite play is tonight, definitely interested in that as well. But in terms of Fanduel is a little bit more different just because you don't have to pay extra for your MVP spot, which is the same as the champion spot on DraftKings. So you got Joe Burrow as $15,500. Tua is at $15,000. They are both very much in play. Obviously, if you're going to play them, you're probably going to stack them with two of their wide receivers. Tyreek Hill's 14,000. Obviously, when you talk about him, you talk about him, Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, T. Higgins. Hill's at 14,000. Jamar Chase $13,500, and then we have Jalen Waddle at $13,500 as well. Obviously, T. Higgins is the cheaper one over there too as well, so I kind of like him quite a bit at $11,500. Joe Mixon's probably a reasonably priced up a little bit more compared to DraftKings at $12,000 over there, because he's taking about a fifth of your salary as compared to just under a fifth on DraftKings. Tyler Boyd's a little bit more priced up as well, but I still like him quite a bit. Chase Edmonds is a lot more priced up over there at $10,500. Both kickers are in play at $9,500 over there. You got the Miami Dolphins defense at $9,000 and the Bengals at $8,500. I think if you play one, it's probably going to be the Dolphins. Raheem Mostert once again is $8,000 over there, so he's definitely in play. If you want to take the chance on tight ends on DraftKings, Gesicki's $7,500. Probably wouldn't do it myself. And Hayden Hurst is $7,000, but you're just hoping for a touchdown out of them. The two wide receivers that are filling in that wide receiver 3 role for Miami, River Craycraft $7,000 and Trent Sherfield $6,500. Personally, I go Sherfield just because he plays more. There should be more opportunities, but Craycraft's been the one that produces more this season. So if you're chasing after them, maybe just build two of the exact same lineups, put Craycraft in one and Trent Sherfield in the other one. And that goes for both FanDuel and DraftKings overall. Durham Smith $6,000 if you really want to take a shot there. And then Mitchell Wilcox, $5,500. That's about as low as I go down on the FanDuel side, but he's just a guy you're hoping gets a decent amount of snaps if Hurst is not like fully ready to go at that point in time. But that's pretty much what I have planned for at this point in time. If you guys have any more questions at all, feel free to reach out. If you got anything else before I go, just let me know as soon as possible as well. But this has been the Thursday Night Football, Cincinnati Bengals versus Miami Dolphins, primarily DraftKings Showdown Slate. Did a little bit of talking about FanDuel there as well. But hopefully you guys all gained a little bit of insight for this slate overall. And hopefully you all do pretty well tonight. Obviously, you can reach out to me on Twitter at Coach Craig Sport before the slate locks if you have any last minute questions as well. Otherwise, good luck to you all tonight. And hopefully you all come home with a little bit of extra money in your pocket.